What's going on, Michael? How you doing? Welcome back to MMA Junkie Radio.
I'm doing great. Great to be with you guys.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much for coming back. Hopefully we can kind of make this a little bit of a tradition when we have some of these big boxing matches, at least the ones that kind of sort of bleed over into MMA and have some sort of an MMA appeal because, hey, let's face it, boxing is popping pretty much every weekend. I keep an eye on it as much as I can, but this one, like we stated, has an MMA twist to it. We have MMA former UFC champion Vitor Belfort. He was going to sling him against Oscar De La Hoya. That's no longer happening. Now it's Evander Holyfield. Does your head explode at what's happening between this hybrid sport, this crazy stuff? Are you enjoying it at all? I mean, I know you're more of a purist.
Well, it's interesting that you said that we're going to do this maybe more often because of the overlap between MMA and boxing. It's just interesting. They were so separate for such a long time, and now they're sort of blending together. I'm not sure I really saw it happening. I find the fights at least mildly, entertaining. I guess I can say that about a lot of boxing matches too. They're not all entertaining. So I think it's interesting. I like to see it.
Okay. De La Hoya was gonna be the opponent for Vitor Belfort. So we had I believe a 49-year-old against a 45-year-old, a 49-year-old that hadn't fought in over a decade versus a 45-year-old that kind of has a boxing background, but in no way would we say he's a professional boxer. But yet maybe things evened out because he's actually competed as of 3 years ago. Whereas again, De La Hoya, I believe, the Pacquiao fight, he quit on the stool, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. But now, even that's now a whole different ballgame. He's out, and Holyfield, who's going to be 59 soon, he's in. What do you make of this? Does this make sense to you, or are they rushing Holyfield into something he shouldn't be doing?
I think from a business standpoint, it makes sense. Holyfield was preparing for this for quite a long time. He was hoping to fight Tyson, and then he had I'm blanking on who he was supposed to fight. He was supposed to fight somebody else coming up, and that didn't happen. And so he was just waiting in the wings. And when Oscar went down with COVID, boom, he was there and ready to go. The thing that strikes me is it's such a radically different fight for Belfort. De La Hoya is basically a small guy compared to Belfort, and it's the opposite with Holyfield. And then you have the age differences, so it's really a radically different fight.
Right. We use the headline Holyfield labors through workout because they had their open workouts. Was that fair, or was that kind of what we should have expected from a 59-year-old?
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up because I just wrote a column on that. My gut reaction to that was probably don't read too much into it. Maybe he's just going through the motions for the camera, that kind of thing. You can never say because a guy looks a certain way hitting the mitts, he's going to look a certain way in the fight. Holyfield's the kind of guy who was always in shape, super incredible boxing intellect. His boxing acumen is just through the roof, tons of experience. I think he's going to be fine, but a little part of me sort of wonders, you see something like that. He looks kind of slow. Maybe his reflexes aren't what they used to be. And he's almost 60 years old. A little part of me is worried because the guy's a legend. He's like one of my favorite fighters of all time, and he's an all-time great. So I don't think it's a problem, but I'm a little worried.
Michael, you're absolutely right. When we think about the matchup, boy, is it night and day, this change. But do you feel like it's a benefit towards Vitor Belfort, or did he actually take a step up? Could this be even more difficult for him?
Honestly, I think he's going to lose either way. I think Oscar was going to be too quick for him. I'm not sure that Oscar's anywhere near as quick as he used to be. He'd be a lot quicker than Belfort. And even though this is a different fight, I think it's going to be the same kind of thing. I just think Evander has got this boxing, background. The way I wrote it is I think that his muscle memory alone could probably beat Belfort, but who knows? Again, the guy's almost 60 years old. Maybe an old man walks into the ring. I can't know for sure. But if that's not going to happen to anybody, it's not going to happen to Holyfield because he always really took care of himself and always stayed fit. So I think he's going to pull it off.
So having the benefit of knowing your stance here that Evander Holyfield, you believe will probably win, do you feel like a full training camp, knowing ahead of time what was going to happen, how much different do you think that fight would be? Like, would Evander completely steamroll him?
I think he still might steamroll him. I think basically he could do what he wants to do. with that little part of me that's a little bit worried. But I think that he's just got too much experience. Plus, he's a lot bigger than Belfort. That's another factor. So I think that I don't think a camp would have made any difference. I'm not sure that Holyfield would even commit to a camp at this stage of the game. I think that he always stays relatively fit. I think he was gearing up for something like this anyway. So I think his mind's probably in an okay place. So I think he's okay. I just hope I'm right. That's the thing.
So back when Anderson Silva beat Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., a lot of guys on our end took sort of a little bit of a victory lap because we were used to being on the bad side of these. And maybe I could vouch for George, but we kind of weren't those guys just because we knew Julio Cesar Chavez Jr.'s background, and sometimes he just didn't show up to things. And I didn't think it would really go down that way with Anderson Silva. That being said, if the shoe were on the other foot and it was Vitor Belfort who was out of the fight and Anderson Silva decided to step in, would that make the matchup any different for Oscar De La Hoya had that happened?
I have to plead ignorance a little bit. What does Silva walk around at, like right around now?
I'd say right around now.
So how much? Sorry?
I would say about 210. And he used to cut to 185 to fight middleweight. So, being that he's not as active, I would say 210. He probably cuts to what cruiserweight I think is 190, right? So it's 200, but they did 190 for that fight. I don't know. I still think it's a tough fight with Oscar, although I haven't seen Oscar fight in 13 years. So he's another question mark. But my gut tells me that Oscar's, his talent level like Holyfield is through the roof compared to these other guys. But he's old, hasn't fought in a long time. I still would pick Oscar to beat any of these guys. Little worried about the size difference. Although if you got to come down to 85, it's not as bad. I still think Oscar wins until I see that he doesn't. That kind of thing. What's your gut tell you about this hybrid sport, we'll call it? Do you think we're in a phase, like a run of maybe a couple of years, and then that should be that? Or do you think there'll be more of this when you have YouTubers, retired boxers, retired MMA fighters, or maybe even other combat sports people, and other entertainers as well, that, at the end of the day, promoters do seem to say, well, hey, there's money to be made here, so we're going to do it. So is this a phase or is this here to stay, in your opinion?
That's a really good question. I'm not even sure I have an answer to that. I think that as long as there's money on the table, they're going to continue to do it. I think it's fun for people. I think the telecasts have been done well, and they're entertaining. I don't know. I think people like seeing stars getting in the ring, throwing punches at each other, whether that's a YouTube star or a retired fighter, an MMA guy, former MMA guy. I think people like it. So I kind of think it's going to stay. And they've always had goofy fights and fighting, periodically, for a long, long time. People like gimmicky things sometimes. So my best answer is we'll see. But right now there's a ton of money on the table and they're taking advantage of it.
At M Rosenthal _box, folks, if you want to follow him, and you should follow him, I should say. Well, okay, let me phrase it this way. We kind of hope that it does stick around as long as we get maybe one per season, like one in the spring, one in the summer. I don't know if we can handle any more of that. I could be fine anywhere between 2 and 4. That's what our audience is telling us. A few people are ragging on it. No, I'm done with it. Others are enjoying it. Our traffic does well. What about over on the boxing side? Does your audience want more of it? And what is your palate? What can you handle in a year?
I don't mind a couple fights a year. I'm on the same page with you there. I'll be honest with you, though. I don't think that these things resonate too much with my readers. I really don't. I don't think that people care too much about Jake Paul, for example. Some do, but I think, Manny Pacquiao, the numbers go through the roof. Certain guys just do really good numbers. Jake Paul's not one of them. Certainly the MMA guys aren't, because, a lot of boxing fans, I think like a lot of MMA fans, are sort of territorial. They just don't care that much about the other side. But maybe the more they see, the more interest there'll be on both sides. Maybe both sides sort of benefit from this. So I'm with you anyway. Back to your question. I'm with you. A couple times a year is fine with me.
Michael, do you feel like guys like us, right? We were from a certain generation. But when you look at Tyron Woodley and Jake Paul fight, when you look at the crowd, there's a young audience out there. Do you think boxing has benefited in any way? Have any of those extra eyes, do you believe, will stick around and maybe give some of the actual real boxers a shot in boxing cards and order the pay-per-views? Will it transfer over at all, in your opinion?
I'm kind of guessing when I say this, but I really don't think so. I think it's, especially with those, I want to say kids, especially with those fans, it's about names, Jake Paul and Logan Paul and guys like that. And I think once those names go away, I don't think they're going to care. I really don't. Boxing's always sort of been driven by personalities, big personalities, the big star in the sport, Oscar De La Hoya, Floyd Mayweather, Manny Pacquiao. Even for boxing fans, that sort of drives the sport. I think with these fans that follow guys like Jake Paul, I think once they're gone, I don't think they're gonna. I don't think they care that much about boxing. They're just into the event.
Jake Paul had a list of people that he wants to face. On that list was the guy by the name of Canelo Alvarez.
Oh.
When it comes down to money, is there any possibility that this fight could ever come to light?
I don't even. It doesn't really make any sense to me from Canelo's perspective. I mean, he's making a fortune without fighting Jake Paul, and he would be heavily criticized. Plus, I don't think anybody would sanction it. I mean, that's like Jake Paul. That's like committing suicide. I mean, it's a ridiculous matchup. I mean, it's like jumping off a cliff for a few $1 million. Is kind of what he's doing. But who knows? When you're talking about 7 figures, you're talking about maybe 8 figures. Guys do crazy things. You never know. It doesn't sound like Canelo Alvarez to me, but I guess anything's possible, but I don't expect it to happen.
I really hope Canelo doesn't do it. I don't think Canelo needs it. I don't think boxing needs it. And it would not be fair in any possible way. I knew Floyd could carry the bigger brother, Logan, who's definitely weighs over 200. I knew something could happen there, and he could carry him, and no one would get hurt, but Canelo would hurt either one of the Paul brothers. That's
there's no question. Yeah, I mean, that's just kind of a ridiculous matchup. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, Michael, for jumping on here on MMA Junkie Radio, and we really appreciate it. And again, hopefully we can lean on you for some of these big boxing matchups. Our audience is really, really a little bit more open to boxing, I think. So maybe there has been some sort of a benefit to these hybrid cards because I see them tweeting about some of the big matchups that have been taking place. So again, thank you, and thanks for always helping out here with the show.
Great to be here. My pleasure.